This video is brought to you by 3, bringing you 4G at no extra cost.
Hey guys, welcome to BTech. It's Basil here with a Huawei Ascend P7 and an iPhone 6. Both of these phones pack similar footprints, but there are different screen sizes, 4.7 inches versus 5 inches. The iPhone 6 introduces a new styling to the iPhone line. Rounded at the corners, rounded at the edges. It just feels very, very different. Soft in the hand, dare we say. Though with the metal frame and body, it feels very solid as well. The Huawei Ascend P7 looks more like the older styled iPhones, more blocky, but it does have a roundedness to the base, as you can see. It still feels very elegant, very premium, and the flat sides are very easy to hold as well, with the glass front and back adding a sense of expensiveness. Side by side, you can see both of the fronts are similar in terms of the positioning of everything, except for the home button at the base. The home button at the base of the iPhone is a fingerprint scanner. It also brings down the whole user interface so that it's more manageable one-handed. On the right-hand side of the iPhone 6 is a power button, nano SIM card slot, loudspeaker, lightning connector, 3.5mm headphone jack, volume controls and quick toggle, no buttons up at the top. On the back, you've got an 8-megapixel camera with a True Tone LED flash, NFC contact point, and an Apple insignia. That's pretty much it. We've got the 64GB version. It's available in 64 or 1 to 8GB, as well as 16GB, though we'd probably recommend you avoid a 16GB version if you like any kind of music, movies, or anything like that, because you will fill it up in no time flat. As for the Huawei Ascend P7, 5-inch display, no buttons. Right hand side you've got volume control as well as a power button and 2 slots, one for a micro SIM card, one for a micro SD card slot. Micro USB connector at the base. Left hand side, no buttons whatsoever, and up at the top is a 3.5mm headphone jack. This has been nano coated, so while it isn't necessarily waterproof, it should be a little bit water resistant. You've also got a 13-megapixel round camera around the back and a flash, NFC obviously, and we didn't mention that front-facing camera is a whopping 8 megapixels, bringing both side by side, and its screen time. Let's ramp the brightness up on both. Now this isn't totally fair, as we have got different wallpapers on here, but it should be able to give you an idea as to how bright the iPhone screen is. It actually throws our camera off a little bit. So let's drop the brightness on that, giving us the impression that the iPhone is a little bit brighter and therefore might perform better with outdoor viewability. Both are LCD screens, and the Huawei's, while might not be as bright, or it doesn't seem it on first impression, is definitely sharper. A pixel density of 441 versus 326 on the iPhone 6. Side by side though, you'll be hard pressed to tell the difference unless you look very close. Talking about what's inside those screens, and it's Android versus iOS. It isn't just any Android. Huawei has skinned their version of Android with Emotion UI. Huawei really has improved Emotion UI with the latest update, but that is yet to make its way on to the Ascend P7. You can customize themes on here. You've got no applications tray in Huawei's own user interface, although you do have a pull down bar. As you saw earlier, you do also have quick toggles that you can pull down and quick access to your settings in the top right hand corner. You can also multitask, go home and back, and that really is the extent of it, with the home screens being expandable like so, and you can customize your home screens with applications and widgets too. Bringing the iPhone into frame, and interestingly, iOS has actually gotten more complicated than Android after its latest incarnation, iOS 8. Pull down from the top, you've got widgets. Right hand side of that is your notifications. Pull up from the bottom, you've got quick toggles, brightness controls. You've also got a control that dictates media playback, and it's quite intelligent. It'll play back YouTube, whatever it is that you're playing back, and some buttons as well to shortcutting things like your calculator, your camera, and your flashlight. Your home screens really are super simple, just like with Huawei's. Folders and of course shortcuts, and pull down from the anywhere in the home screen to activate Spotlight search. You can now do things like customize your keyboard in iOS 8, which is something that we've been longing for ages. So thank goodness Apple has been listening. Ultimately, therefore, two different user interfaces, both very rich in their own respects. If you want to spend a little bit more money on your apps, then iOS may be the choice for you. If you want a cheaper general user experience, the Huawei Ascend P7 is going to give you that, despite still having very premium hardware. The Huawei Ascend P7's user interface also isn't as stable as that of iOS. There are a few more bugs, a few more glitches here and there, and I suppose that's part and parcel of having an experience that you can tinker with a little bit more with all those themes etc. This might also have something to do with the internals inside. You've got Huawei's own Kirin processor in here with Cat4 LTE support. It's got some really nice advantages. That's very fast LTE, by the way. But at the same time, it does get a little bit warm. It does get a little bit slow every now and then when it is loaded up, despite the 2 gig of RAM on here. That's because Android paired with Huawei's UI is a lot to push, not to mention all those pixels. As for the iPhone 6, it's an Apple A8 chipset in here. Both will handle games very well, but the user interface really shouldn't stutter at all, despite the fact it's only a dual-core processor by contrast to a quad-core processor, and you've got 1 gig of RAM by contrast to 2 gig of RAM. Bringing them side by side, and we can talk about multimedia. Well, we haven't really done a camera test, so comparing the cameras isn't particularly fair. Historically, the iPhone 5S beat that of the Huawei Ascend P7, so we can assume the same of its successor. What we can also say is the Huawei Ascend P7 records full HD video, the iPhone records full HD video and slow-mo at 240 frames per second. Another major consideration is storage. If you like getting your own movies on here, playing back things like MKV files without having to throw them through iTunes, just chuck them on a storage card and all that, then the Android device will definitely be for you. You can download third-party players and it's an absolute doddle to play back your own content and get your own everything on here. Instead, on the iPhone, you generally have to go through iTunes, so it's a little bit more of a faff. Having said that, the iTunes experience is very smooth. If you're prepared to pay the premium, it means you get a lot of content in a very easy way. You've got that to a degree with the Google Play Store, but the iTunes Store is much more locked down, so it doesn't afford you the versatility of necessarily doing it all yourself like Android does. Moving on to connections and battery life, and the Huawei Ascend P7 sports a 2500 milliamp battery and lasts about a day. It's got some aggressive consumption reminders that are going to bug you in your notification bar to keep you switching things off and switching things off automatically. That actually does help if you can put up with them to get maybe a day and a half out of this thing, despite the fact you have a comparatively small milliamp percentage to other Android flagships with similar sized screens. As for the iPhone, it's an 1810 milliamp cell, smaller still, but with iOS sporting dual cores by contrast to quad cores and 1 gig of RAM by contrast to 2, its efficiency is pretty much guaranteed by comparison. Whether or not the iPhone will perform better though, we'll have to have it in for a little bit longer before we can conclusively say. Ultimately, therefore, you have 2 premium experiences. The Huawei comes in at a lot less money. Sure, you've got the same 16 gig memory as the base package on the iPhone, but of course you can expand that on the Ascend P7, by contrast to the iPhone, which you really can't. So we'd recommend getting a 64 or indeed a 128 gig version, which will set you back a pretty penny. Hopefully you've enjoyed our comparison, found it useful. The Ascend P7 and the iPhone 6 II premium devices with very different things to offer. If you've got any questions about either of the phones, ping them in the comments section below. If you like BTech in general, click subscribe, and of course, if you like the video, click that like button. Thanks for watching.